So welcome to our Everything Marketplaces workshop today, which is on marketplace monetization and ads more specifically. So as usual, we bring in domain experts for specific topics and subjects that are relevant to us all as marketplace founders and leaders here. So today I'm really excited to welcome on Chris from Kevel, which is a marketplace API for marketplace ads and promoted and sponsored listings. So really excited to welcome on today. Just kind of quick format before we jump into it. These are about 25 to 30 minute presentations, and then we'll jump into a Q&A for those that are on after. So with that said, welcome Chris, and I'll let you take it over from here.
All right, today I want to talk about marketplace ad revenue and why native, well thought out, and user-centric advertising can be a really great revenue for marketplaces. And this isn't a push that you need to add ads like right now, or you're a very dumb founder. No, not at all. Like, it doesn't make sense for a lot of marketplaces, especially smaller ones. And other priorities will and should probably be pushed in front of these as well. But I do want to touch upon what are examples of very impressive marketplace ad platforms, what are common objections to them, what are benefits, and then give a framework for getting there. All right, so first off, why should you care what I say? Fair question. And this will be the only time I give the Kevel pitch, I swear. But I think it's important to set some context. So my name is Chris Uptrine. I'm the VP of Marketing at Kevel. I have 10 plus years experience in advertising technology. And over the years, I've worked with marketplaces like Overstock and Yelp and Zillow with app monetization, search engine marketing, and now in-house ad platforms. Fun fact about me, my favorite marketing campaign is Carlsberg, probably the best lager in the world. Not because it's actually a great slogan. In fact, it did not help with their sales at all. But there's just so many comical aspects to it. One, Orson Welles, of all people, was the initial spokesperson from it. Then you have the qualifier of probably. Like, you would think if you're just making something up, you would remove that. And then it's certainly not the best lager in the world, let alone probably. And then years later, they changed it so that instead of probably the best lager, it was probably not the best lager in the world, but we're improving it, which is like kind of like what Domino's did a couple years ago, where they took testimonials from people that Domino's pizza was terrible. Not a marketing strategy I would necessarily go with. But I wanted to start with that. Sorry with the tangent, because I like starting with random facts, just in case you learn nothing at all from what I'm about to tell you. You'll walk away a little bit smarter. And a little bit about Kevel. We're an API platform on which marketplaces can build custom ad platforms for sponsored listings, native ads, email ads, etc. And we've helped hundreds of customers launch their ad platforms. And I wanted to impart that knowledge that we've learned over that time onto you. Moving on. All right, so marketplaces often see ad revenue as a low priority revenue source, and even something to avoid altogether. And it makes sense. If your goal is to quickly scale both your supply and your demand, then anything that could hinder the user experience, such as obtrusive ads, would be terrible to integrate into your platform. And a great example of this is this ZNet article. I believe we actually took this, but I forget from when. And ironically, it's about Google Chrome blocking ads. And you see there's 3 ads of different sizes on the first view there. You've got a show notifications pop-up, a subscribe pop-up, and an autoplay video. This is to me like one step below in the annoying scale of ZNet just like punching you in the face. And if that's what ads are, then like, yeah, I am also in the no ads ever bucket. But if you think of the major marketplaces, they Most of them do have some type of ad product. And these headlines are just from the past year. Instacart raised 300 million literally a couple weeks ago, predominantly to build out their advertising ad platform. Amazon's ad business jumped 90% quarter over quarter. This last year, I think Q2 to Q3. Etsy also saw really great growth in 2020. And it's this incremental, extremely high margin revenue stream that gives them the resources and the capital to outpace competitors. And, a lot of people, they may say, well, of course they have ad platforms. These are very large companies. They have the resources to build them. And my take is it's more the other way around, where building an ad platform helps drive your growth. It gives you incremental revenue that can fuel other aspects of your your product. And it's not just an add-on that these companies did after they were large. So I'll go into what exactly a marketplace ad product is. And as mentioned, these are certainly not programmatic banner ads. This here is literally Sears.com site. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you see these terrible ads. And while Sears isn't a, I would say, pure play marketplace, they are a multi-brand retailer. And they could use that space to promote more of their vendors. Also, since it's all the way on the bottom of the page, they're probably charging HBO for that impression. Nobody is really going to be scrolling all the way down there. So it's a little duplicitous as well. So when I say custom ad platforms, when I say marketplace ads, what I really mean is instances like this, where you have Intuit working with Monster to do a sponsored blog article anytime there's money or salary involved. You have Edmunds doing recommended carousel ads where Toyota is appearing in search for Honda or Toyota. Zillow's got their native ads that Crate & Barrel and Verizon can promote. You have Unsplash's great Unsplash for brands ad unit. I will talk about this a little bit later because I am a fanboy of this ad unit. Dive a little bit more into that. You have sponsored listings by Yelp and by eBay, where these companies can pay to promote their listings just for relevant searches. And there's a lot more examples. I didn't touch upon, what the Amazon, Etsy, and Instacart look like. Those are more in the sponsored listings realm. So what characteristics do these successful ad platforms share? And there's about 4 or 5 that I'll touch on here. And the first one is they are generally in-house built. It's not the case with everyone, but nearly everyone is built using their own infrastructure. And this allows them to make sure that the ad units blend in with the surrounding environment and isn't just thrust in there with some JavaScript ad tag. Doing it in-house also gives them the scope and complexity that they want. They're also user first. None of these ad units are obtrusive or annoying. I will say, at least in my eyes, I'm a little bit biased toward liking native ads, but most of them were just either the listings with the word promoted or sponsored on it, or an image with a brand image on it. So they're very seamless. They do fit in. And they don't ruin the user experience. Since they are in-house ad built, they also generally aren't going to use third-party ad tags. And the reason these aren't great is, 1, they're ad blocked. 2, they could slow down the page, ruining any type of good user experience that you want. And then they could also inadvertently drop cookies or share data. Like if you don't know what calls are leaving your page and where they're going, like you're not going to own all of your data. They also employ targeting around search, intent, or content, or context. And Toyota, for example, is paying anytime somebody searches for Toyota or Honda in Edmonds, as I mentioned earlier. eBay sellers are appearing just for a search of Xbox. Here on Amazon, you have SodaStream appearing just for any searches for soda. So these ad units tend to be highly valuable because it shows that the user is in market for that type of service. They also often monetize with first-party data. And a lot of companies don't do this because there is value in the search and intent targeting metric. But there's a lot of situations where you could use data to create behavioral or demographic segments. An example of this, Xbox could, or eBay could, track users who are searching for Xboxes but don't actually buy anything. And they could turn this into some type of behavioral segment like Xbox browsers or game lovers, and then allow PlayStation to target those users the next time they're on the site with either native ads or banner ads. And PlayStation can promote their like PS5. They know the user has searched for an Xbox, not bought one, maybe they're in market, even if that user is searching for something else altogether on eBay. Finally, most of these large platforms, not all of them, but most of them employ some type of self-serve portal where advertisers and vendors and sellers can pay to promote themselves, and they just go in, they put in their campaigns. They don't need any like ad operations or sales, or the campaigns are direct sold to advertisers. So a general trend with everything I've talked about and everything I will talk about is that these are direct sold. They're not sourced through an ad exchange. They're not sourced through an ad network. They're not programmatic banner ads. And that does a couple things. It ensures that there's relevancy. It ensures that there's brand safety. You're not going to have terrible ads for Cialis appear on a site where you don't want it to appear on. So there's just a lot of value in being able to control those relationships. Next one. And these examples that I've done, a lot of them were large companies, but you certainly don't need to be a large market leader marketplace to implement some type of custom marketplace ads. And I want to talk about a case study of ours, Cherish. It was a very niche marketplace. They call themselves the Design Lovers Marketplace. They came to us in 2016 looking to integrate promoted listings, sponsored listings into their search results. At that time, they had about 1 million monthly impressions, maybe 15, 20 employees. So they weren't a huge company by other means, but they had nailed their niche and they were looking for additional revenue streams. And of course, like with that many people, they weren't looking to replicate what Amazon had. They just wanted to create something simple so that their listers could pay a little bit more every day, every week for their listing to be promoted higher up on the page. And within about 2 to 3 weeks using APIs, this is what Cherish built. And it's very seamless. I mean, I love this. This is a great use case. We love to show people. The only way that you can really notice it's an ad is because promoted is above that like 18th century line there. and users can interact with the ad in the exact same way they can interact with a standard listings. Like you can heart it, you can click on it, it goes to the standard listings for that item. With that, they also built a very, very simple portal tab in their sellers portal that allowed them to, that allowed their sellers to opt in. And all they have to do is click a button, put in their daily ad budget, then put in their credit card, then click yes, and their campaigns are up and running. Cherish on the back end does the heavy lifting of deciding like what should, where should it appeal, where should it appear, what searches based off of category, subcategory. And by doing all that work in the back end, they make it super simple for their sellers to opt in. This is probably as simple as you can get. And then the more complex are if you've ever used like LinkedIn or Google or Facebook's self-serve ad systems, which are very, very complicated. So I love the results of this. It's very impressive. Within about 2 months of the launch, they were able to get to a point where this ad revenue was about 10% of their top line revenue. And again, this is in a couple months, and I don't think ad revenue is ever going to double your top line revenue. It may not add 30% more, but for a couple weeks worth of work, I'm not sure anybody would turn down a 10% increase. And another reason this is interesting is that this is top line revenue. When you look at bottom line, this is extremely high margin. I mean, you're paying for a tech provider if you're using one, and then you're paying for anybody doing ad operations, any engineers on the product, any salespeople involved with it. So even though that's 10% of top line revenue, it could easily be much higher when you're looking just at that bottom line. What's also interesting is I was obviously not involved in any of the investment conversations, but in September, they raised $33 million. And I can't help but think that there's some correlation between what appears to be a very predictable revenue stream with raising capital. And that makes sense. Investment companies are looking to see, they're asking how you're making money. And it really is a predictable revenue model. If you look at this, even as their impressions grew over the last 5 years, their ad revenue grew at the same amount. So you can make the argument that, okay, it's 10% at the very beginning of the launch, but that's going to see diminishing returns. As it scales, as we scale, our advertisers are not going to be willing to pay more. And that really wasn't the case for them. As their impressions scaled, advertisers, their listers, their sellers continued to pay for these slots, meaning that they can now say, you know what? Our expectation is if we were to double in traffic, we'll double in ad revenue. So predictable revenue models are gold for everybody. All right, this brings us to the benefits of building a custom marketplace ad platform. And I think the key, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is it unlocks a new high margin revenue stream without hurting that user experience. Now, as I said, this is unlikely to drive 50% more revenue, but if you're putting in a little bit of work, a little bit of resources, and you're seeing 5 to 10 to 20% top line revenue growth with a higher percentage of bottom line growth, considering the margins, then, and it grows as you grow because it's predictable, then it does start to look potentially more interesting from a priority standpoint. It also entices supply to your platform. This is going to be very contingent on who you are, what your product is. But let's say you're your listers, your supply don't like the fact that they're on the 6th page of Amazon or Monster or Etsy or wherever else they are, and they don't have the budget to appear #1 because it's very competitive through the sponsored listings platforms. But they love the idea that working with your marketplace, they can pay probably a nominal fee at the beginning of your ad platform to appear higher up. So it could help differentiate yourself and bring supply onto the platform. And that goes along as well with the next point, which is this idea of creating a currency. And this isn't like Dogecoin or Pancake swag. This is more turning your impressions into something you can sell and negotiate with. So, let's say you made a huge mistake. Maybe you forgot to add a put into cart button onto somebody's listing, and that lister is very upset. And they come to you and you say, okay, sorry, how about we offer 10,000 free impressions as the #1 search result for whatever search you want, or you'll be featured at the top in a box for the key search terms that you want. Or going with the enticing supply, if you really want to get a large, say, retailer or a lister to your platform, you can say, I will give you 10 million free impressions in order to sign with us. So it starts to be something you can negotiate with and give away as end users make goods. And then finally, as we saw with Cherish, it could also help with any rounds of capital that you want to raise. So having that predictable revenue model can certainly help with your evaluation and understanding how you can drive more money as you scale. So I guess, let's see, let's go to the next one. So yeah, why don't more medium to large size marketplaces build ad products? And there's a few explanations for this, all of them very valid. And I don't think any small marketplace should just jump into this. It really doesn't make sense. But even for medium to large marketplaces, and I think a key one is it's that hatred of ads. And we touched upon it with the ZNet example, with the Sears example. If you're viewing ads, that's why I put quotation, if you're viewing ads as programmatic banner ads, yes, you should spit on them. Never install those. But that isn't really the number and amount of ads that you could, the type of ads that you could ultimately incorporate into your system. Also, the complexity of building these platforms, both the true complexity and the perceived. The truth is you can't really use a third-party JavaScript-based ad server like Google Ads Manager or Smart Ad Server to build these types of platforms. You'll have to build it in-house or with an ads API partner, but in 100% no-code marketplace, if that's your goal, you have no resources, it is going to be tough to build this type of like integrative custom platform. Other priorities. And as I said, if you're a small marketplace, ads aren't really going to be a fit for you. You should focus entirely on building up your network effects of finding your supply and demand and figuring out what your unique selling proposition is. Even for larger marketplaces, you may have a lot of priorities. You may not have a lot of resources to dedicate it. And that's where you have to consider, is that potential 10 to 15% increase for a couple months worth of work justified? Or do I think if I invest in these other projects that'll lead to more growth than that? Finally, it overlaps with existing business models. You may already have a featured section in the top of your search results, or maybe you maybe you manually place an ad unit in, or manually place somebody's listing as one of the top 3 results. And these could be negotiated into contracts. They're probably going to be manually placed versus any type of like dynamic like decision engine. And you may not consider these ads, so to speak, but they do share a lot of similarities with sponsored ad units or with native ad units. And as I said, these are all legitimate concerns, but I would caution you about putting ad strategy as your like 60th priority, and then as time goes on, you know, it continues to drop or stay there. All right, so how do you start with this marketplace ad strategy? And really our approach to it is you need to crawl, then walk, then run. This image is not actually of my baby. I wish my baby was that cute. Just kidding, I don't have children. Okay. I think first you need to figure out your unique selling proposition. You know, if you have a marketplace for male skin products, don't go selling that. Don't go trying to find Lululemon as an advertiser, for instance. But you have to figure out what makes you, your marketplace, your product unique. And that could be your user base. It could be what they're searching for and why. It could be just the nature of your platform. It could be your supply side and so on. And I think that this is said very succinctly and well by Luke, the VP of product or the head of product at Unsplash, who we recently had the fortunate opportunity to interview about their Unsplash for brands. And what I love about the Unsplash for brands, going back to it, is here you have an example of Square paying to have a stock image featuring their logo appearing for any searches of small business. And what this means is, you know, you're a freelancer who wants to write for Forbes or Newsweek or HuffPost, and you're writing about small businesses. You do a search, and hey, there's a image with Square. That in itself is, you know, a form of like impressions. You see it, brand awareness. But then if you download it for free, if you start spreading it across all of your channels, then you do start to see exponentially more reach for Square. And what Luke said about this is, let's do this. All right, we looked at what made Unsplash unique. We can drive more people to an image than any other platform. And we thought, how can we turn this unique attribute into a business model? What can we do? What we can do for any image, we can do for any brand. And this is why Unsplash, when they launched this, decided to go after third-party advertisers who were interested in promoting their products in a visual way, versus say they could have gone after their freelance photographers and said, hey, you can pay to have your photograph, your free download photograph promoted, which isn't really a thriving business model. Why would they pay? So instead, they went out to third-party advertisers versus their like core supply at that point. And then you also have instances like Yelp, where their unique proposition, particularly in the early days, was being a go-to tool for local restaurant discovery. And their value, especially then, was creating a form of users who were searching for a place to eat, likely in a couple hours, if not like right that moment. And it made sense that their first ad unit that they released, their Yelp for Businesses, was focused on restaurants who wanted to pay to be top of mind, to be there for that intent audience. But then you have Zillow, who does both of those approaches. So their business model allows them to appeal both to outside advertisers and to their listers. And the reason for that is by building a community of people, of renters and buyers, people in market to buy or rent, they become interesting to property managers or agents who want to get their listing in front of users at the right time and are willing to pay for that. But at the same time, their user base, that activity creates very valuable behavioral and demographic segments. So for instance, anyone searching on Zillow, besides casual browsers wondering what the house across the street is worth, are people who are likely in market to move soon or to rent soon or first-time home buyers, et cetera. And that's valuable data that can then be sold to outside advertisers. So, this ad is Verizon. It's a native ad integrated to the sponsored listings, but it makes sense, right? You're moving, you probably want a new internet. You may need a new internet provider, but it's just as relevant for Casper. You want to move, new mattress, et cetera. So this allows them to appeal to outside advertisers. So once you figure out your basic strategy, you say, hey, I know what our unique selling prop is. This is what we want to, this is the type of ad unit we want to appeal to. This is the type of advertiser that we want. Then you have to invest some minimal resources into the MVP, but you'll want to start extremely, extremely basic. So whatever this ad unit is, don't employ dynamic search targeting. Don't employ auction pricing or frequency capping or or make it the prettiest ad unit ever. Instead, you want to create something extremely basic. As well, you should have a product manager spend finger in the wind, 50% of their time focused on this. And it should be somebody already in-house. Probably don't want to hire a new person for this, but this product manager will be in charge of speccing out what the ad unit should be, talking to advertisers or talking to your current supply partners, your listers, to see if they'd be interested in this, setting up ads, doing the analysis. And I wanted to point out Corner Shop here because they're a really great example of how you start basic. And Corner Shop is a Latin American food delivery service partially owned by Uber. They have very recently launched an MVP with us. And it's a little hard to see here, but you see a featured box with ad on the top left. And this is for a search of leche, which is the Spanish word for milk. And there's 5 ads there. And literally all of them are for Oreo. So 5 ads, all one advertiser. I believe they're all different Oreo products since they have a whole swath of them. But this is one hard-coded search term, right? You want milk, you may want cookies with it. One advertiser, no frequency capping. I don't think there's even geo-targeting here. This is just like an intent-based, probably hard-coded, right? So instead of dynamically showing for any search, any search, they just say, hey, if somebody searches for leche, we're going to show this unit. But if Nabisco, owner of Oreo, sees some sales, they're happy with the results, and they say, hey, we'll give you more money if we can have more impressions, or we'd also like to appear for cookies, then Corner Shop has the insights to say, oh, wow, there may actually be an opportunity here. Let's go talk to Nesquik or Ovaltine and have them bid against each other for those slots. Or, let's do more than just milk. Let's do more search terms and more advertisers. And then you can see how it could blossom from there, just starting very basic. And if there is room for optimism, then you should start to dedicate a small team. Like, don't go and hire 10 engineers from Google, 10 ad engineers from Google. But instead, get your marketing team to help with an advertise with us page, or your product designer to create a very simple but pretty opt-in, self-serve opt-in tool. Maybe hire somebody to do sales and ad operations to really focus on talking to either outside advertisers or your current supply partners, anyone who would be listing. And then you will want to have some technical resources, less if you're working with an ads API partner, and a little bit more if you aren't. And if you have one product manager, you have 2 to 3 engineers, you're not going to come close to building what Amazon has built. I mean, they have hundreds of engineers, ad engineers, but it does start to give you more momentum. And you say, okay, great. If we hire more people, we think we can add more features and ad units and increase our revenue proportionally. Which is why from there, with your team, you should slowly expand with more ad units. This is a very holistic list. It's unlikely you would launch an MVP with many, if any, of these, but over time, you could implement auction pricing, whereby advertisers can choose what they're willing to bid, say like $2 cost per click, and then the decision engine would say, all right, based off of this person is willing to bid and what their click-through rates are, we're going to put them higher or lower. Day parting, if customers really want to target or days of the week or hours of the day, then you can implement that feature as well. So there's a lot of them. But also over time, implement many more ad units as well. And this is a mock-up that we did for a company called Backstage. They're a marketplace for casting calls, job marketplace. And you could start with sponsored listings. You could go to email ads and native ads and sponsored listings, recommended ads, go into internal promotions. So you're using the ad decision engine to power basically everything that people see. And this is going to take more resources, but as you're adding ad units, as you're adding features and driving more revenue from that, then it's likely it'll easily justify that work. And then to scale, the next step is to launch with Selfserve. And Selfserve isn't for everyone, but if you are appealing to your vendors and your listers who have this like portal that they can log into, doing something like Cherish did, where you have a tab and you can opt in easily, is a low cost, low effort way of seeing if you can get the long tail without actually having to hire aggressively for sales or ad operations. Or you can go the route of like LinkedIn and Facebook and all of those other platforms that are very, very sophisticated, and they have spent years upon years, improving on. So final slide, a recap of why to prioritize ad revenue. Again, not for everyone, not for small, but something to think about as you look at your 2021 and 2022 strategy and revenue planning. And that boils down to being able to unlock new revenue in a user-friendly way, enticing supply by saying, hey, we have this opportunity to promote your own product, creating your own currency so that you are giving out make goods or enticing people without having to like actually hand out money or revenue or give up anything bigger than that. And it can also help with raising capital as well, having a predictable revenue model. All right, I think that's it for me. I think the last slide.
Awesome. This is super helpful. So thanks for walking us through it. I actually had a question for you myself, and I think this was a great, or you made the point as far as being able to entice supply. So in the earliest stages of marketplaces, for instance, when I was kind of initially building and scaling studio time, one of the biggest kind of requests we got was from studios asking how they could kind of boost their listings or be towards the top. So I know that it's requested quite often. So how are you kind of, or maybe what are you seeing as far as, with at Kevel with potential kind of clients coming in, as far as like the breakdown of what stages are they looking to do this as far as promoting listings internally? And then how do they kind of think about maybe doing that and then versus kind of the third party ads?
Yeah. The classic like build versus buy and,
Yeah.
and when you do that. Most of our customers who come to us tend to be more in that medium size to enterprise size, where they've figured out that they have a niche. And I would say over 50% of these companies that come to us have built something internally. if you are building a basic ad decision engine that has 2 ads that it's choosing from and has very little targeting, let's say no targeting, then I don't know how to code. I could probably write that algorithm, right? That 50% of the time it shows this ad. But a lot of these companies start doing that and they say, okay, great, I'll build something basic. I'll throw in some maybe geo-targeting. You think that's so many of these products have geo-targeting, but a lot of these companies that come to us say, I don't have the tools to do like state or city level targeting, and my advertisers are looking for that. So they've built something and it works, but it doesn't scale. So they come to us and they say, great, I have these advertisers, they're pushing for features. They really want to do more search term targeting or day parting, or they really like the idea of state city targeting, and we can't do that, and we run the risk of losing them. So I think in a lot of ways, there's reason to do that MVP in-house. Like when you figure out that you know what you want to do, try it in-house, give a little resources, see if it works. That corner shop example is a great one. But as you start to see early success, or you want to like lead with your best foot forward, that's where you may think about working with a third-party infrastructure tool that gets you everything you need very quickly. So if you want to lead with state geo-targeting, like maybe you start using a third party, or maybe you try it yourself first with your own product and a very basic ad unit.
Awesome. That's super helpful. And then as far as like, what does that kind of, I would say like time, resources, and capital kind of commitment look like as far as if someone is looking to, say, for instance, like work with Kevel, third party?
Yeah. It comes down to complexity. I love the Cherish use case because of its simplicity, but it's not really the most optimized product if you want to like scale to what Amazon has, right? So with them, and they were a very specific use case. The engineer really understood our product super quickly. He was able to build that in like 2 weeks, about half of his time. But again, it's a very simple use case. Generally, the companies that come to us looking for an infrastructure partner are spending about 2 months on average with integration, but that's not full time. And that's not with like a team of 5. That's 2 or 3 engineers. Part of their time is spent coding to these APIs. So it's not like a no code situation, but that's how like these infrastructure tools work as well. Of like if you really want to get integrated with your back end, if you want to employ a lot of complex targeting, you want to do it quickly so that you're getting ad results back in like 25, 50 milliseconds, then you're really going to have to like work to get there.
Got it. And this might be a little bit more specific question, just out of personal curiosity. But so if you have like the self-serve, we'll just use, for instance, the Cherish use case, because I think that's really great. So if they have this self-serve kind of portal where say a seller could promote their listings internally, amongst the search results, is that, as far as like the payment gateway on that, are they kind of in it? Are you guys handling that, or is that kind of within their platform?
Yeah, good question. It's their platform. We have a long-term vision of integrating with more of these like solutions, like Stripe, like finance. But right now, those companies are doing it in-house. So I don't know, but let's say that they do hook up with Stripe. So when somebody decides to opt into these campaigns, their sellers portal, it'll send Stripe an API notification, and then it'll send us an API notification to create that campaign. So they using that backend API process, it allows them to like pretty easily build a tool like that.
Awesome. Yeah, I wasn't sure what that kind of portal looked like as far as on the seller side. So cool. Let's see. Did anyone have a question as far as Cynthia or Fitz? See if we have any.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I don't think I have any questions on my end. Is there anything last thing you wanted to leave with us here, Chris? Or
Actually, sorry, can I just ask a very quick one? And I'm really sorry I missed the beginning.
Oh, you're good.
Here, let me do the video because it's a bit rude not to do with that video. My question is, because I missed the beginning, what is your definition of small and medium? And I mean, I can guess large, but what is your definition of small and medium? I guess in terms of traffic and such.
Yeah, it's a combination of the number of visitors to your site, the number of supply partners. Let's use Cherish as an example. Let's say they have a very robust supply side, a lot of individual users wanting to sell their antique furniture, but they have 1,000 people a month who visit the site, right? They're going to opt into the campaigns. You know, maybe they'll spend like 10 cents a day to promote their product. Suddenly that's not interesting to Cherish because they're not making any money. To the sellers, like, you know, maybe they don't care because it's only 10 cents, whatever, it was a button to opt in, but it's definitely not justifies any time that Cherish put into it. On the other hand, if there's a lot of users searching for antique furniture, they have millions upon millions of searchers, and there's 2 people selling furniture. You know, are those companies gonna like pay? No, they're already top of the list, or they or maybe they just don't want to, and then suddenly nobody's paying. So, you know, like with a marketplace network effects, there's like an advertiser and publisher network effect. You have to have a critical number of people willing to pay for these ad slots, and a critical number of people viewing them, clicking, purchasing, whatever you're really tracking.
Why are you spamming?
Like we said with Cherish, they were about 1 million impressions a month. I would say that gets to around maybe a low end, but they knew what their traffic was. They knew they had a lot of supply partners. So, you know, it could be less. We have worked with some very niche doctor sites, so like doctor search sites, and they do have, some of them have smaller traffic than that, but their doctors will like pay $500 for a lead, right? So they're willing to pay a lot. So in that instance, they have a supply that is willing to pay, and maybe not as many users, but they don't need as many users to make the same amount of money. So there is that interplay. And if you're building a marketplace and you don't feel like you have both of those at an equal stance, where somebody's willing to pay the number of impressions that there are, then it probably doesn't make sense to like jump into this. It also makes it easier if you are selling to third-party advertisers like Zillow or Unsplash were in those examples. You know, if you're small and you have 20,000 visits a month, you know, Nabisco isn't going to come talk to you. Verizon isn't going to come talk to you. There is some type of like minimum brand recognition that is involved, which is why marketplaces see success with their own vendors and supply first, and then branching into other outside as they grow.
Right. I mean, because our challenge is, so anyway, so we have a business called What Storage, and it basically, it connects people who want self-storage, crate storage, mobile storage with obviously those storage operators. And so we have the issue in that obviously everyone wants to be in the top 3. And so giving them other ways to get those eyeballs is a serious consideration for us at the moment, because there's a lot of people who want to do it, but there are only 3 slots. Then the other piece is that because storage tends to be a moment in your life sort of event, usually people are pretty stressed when they want to store. And as a result, they're actually open to various types of solutions. So, you know, if you have to move all of a sudden because of you're getting a divorce, then you actually, there's quite a few things you're looking for at that moment in time. And so, and I guess the final piece is that in terms of there are a lot of vendors who sell into the storage industry. So there's also the component of actually facilitating that advertising to our our suppliers. So I'm just trying to get, it feels like there is something there, but I'm just trying to work through how to narrow down where's the first place to start, basically.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm just figuring out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you do have your supply side like clamoring for one of those top spots, then there is a potential there to say, hey, we have a product, you pay this amount, are you willing to do that? And as it expands, you start to incorporate more of the features that will drive revenue, like auction pricing, where you'll maximize the value of that inventory. That, as I said earlier, will depend on the number of searches. So if you have to price accordingly, where maybe to make money for you, you have to price really high, and maybe the storage companies, supply partners want to do that. They're willing to. It's worth it to them. And like having those conversations, right? Chatting with them. Would you do this if we built it? Type of thing is definitely a place to start.
Right.
If you are niche, like there aren't many people like you, then potentially you could talk to some of these third-party advertisers that would say, all right, that's our in-market audience, right? We can't target that demographic on our ad exchanges, right? We have large budgets. We want to target them on Facebook, but Facebook doesn't have I'm moving, demographic target to click. But you could be like, with us, you can do that. So if you're very niche, and there are maybe not that many players in the space who would be good fits to target, outbound email, create an advertise with us page, fake it until you make it, and just be like, we have this ad product. Would you be interested in buying that slot? And then, potentially that they'd be like, actually, we've been, you have to tailor the emails and the calls. But I think there is an opportunity there to have advertisers reach users where they want to be.
I think no. I mean, that's fantastic advice. I think the piece that's most powerful for us is the fact that we obviously tailor by geography, and that's where you can actually get lots of different advertisers who, you can get local advertising because of the way that this business works. So just thinking through the mechanics of that. But yeah, okay, no, that's really
local local advertising is hard to scale. In that instance with Corner Shop and Nabisco, they're going to pay wherever, right? If you're working with a very local one, the search impressions for that are going to be very low. And that's a long-term scale model. It's how Yelp scaled. But I don't have definitive proof of this, but I would not be surprised if Yelp launched with McDonald's or a national chain first. It was just we'll promote you anytime somebody searches. So the local is the scaling long tail. That's how you would make it big. But to begin with, it may have to be a national advertiser where it's limited geo, if any geo targeting.
No, that makes sense. And there are a lot of folks in this market who want to speak to this audience, so that makes sense. Thank you.
I think this is a little bit of a tangent, but people in this community may not be very in depth with the ad tech world in general. But Google announced about a year or so ago that they're getting rid of third-party cookies. And what that means is it's going to be harder for people to track users across the web, which means a lot of ways that advertisers are reaching people through third-party data providers appending information to buying won't have that anymore. And there are some solutions that are trying to make that work. I don't think it will, but this is going to push a lot of advertisers to look for alternative forms of advertising beyond just the standard Facebook, Google, and then ad exchanges that are layer on targeting. So it may be a situation when this goes into effect in 22 that advertisers are more open and tailoring that pitch to hey, you lost the ability because third party went away to target this group. Now you can do it through us. So I do think there's a major opportunity with these industry changes going on for marketplaces to capitalize on that, even if that's not like an obvious way of a
Actually, it's a
reason
really good
for
point.
that. So
Yeah.
I do think it'll impact it. We'll see. We still have a year until it goes into effect.
Isn't Facebook doing the same thing? Or they're being pressured, but are they doing the same?
Yeah, there's yes, they are by Apple. So Apple announced a couple months, maybe the fall, and then they delayed it, that they're going to be forcing apps to prompt people to track their IDFA, their identifier for advertisers. And this is how brands were, or mobile apps generally, were showing, were tracking and showing ads to users within their apps. And this IDFAs, they also have like third-party data tied to them. So it's a persistent ID, it can technically be reset, but it's effectively persistent. And this change means that Facebook may not be able to target their users in the same way unless people opt in and say, yes, I agree to being tracked by advertisers, basically. So Facebook and Apple are in a tiff right now about, no, we should have this, we shouldn't have this. And it could very much impact as well as advertisers on Facebook. So this has never been a better time. I'm biased. This has never been a better time to like be a third-party publisher and say, hey, I have this unique intent audience. I have this unique audience data. Work with me. And advertisers don't necessarily want to work with 30 partners versus Google, Facebook, like a Xandr ad exchange, but that may be what happens.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great insight. So thanks for sharing that with us, especially for the B2B or B2C marketplaces in the group where the businesses have an ad budget anyways. So. Well, cool. Well, this was super helpful. This is, wasn't expecting to learn this much about it. So thanks for taking the time to share more. So.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate it.